So welcome everybody to our Ask the Doc call for July 19th. And as Dr. Mark alluded to just before we went on to record was, where is this summer going to? Everybody's been busy. I see new haircuts. Rosalie has a beautiful new haircut out there. And it's so great to see everybody on the call. And I'm just absolutely delighted that my co-host, Angela Corns, can be on. So welcome, Angela. It's great to have you.
I love being here. We have some fabulous questions today, Dr. Mark. So I hope you're ready.
Always.
Thank you, everyone that submitted questions. It's always interesting, the questions that we get and the content that comes from Dr. Mark. So I'm super excited about this call today.
Yeah, I mean, it's always such a learning experience, and being involved in Vox Life from its inception. And Ange, I know you were pretty close to the beginning as well. You know, it's always amazing what we keep learning and we keep seeing with this technology, and it's so thrilling to learn more about the exciting things that happen when you continue to wear and believe in this technology, and to see where we've come already. So Dr. Mark, it's always a pleasure for you to take time out. It's been a few weeks since we've had a call, or three or 4 weeks since we've had a call. So I'm really excited to get on this call today. And maybe for the new people, I see there's a number of new people, and we've had lots of people join the Team Vaccination Facebook group. And so maybe for the new ones that are out there, we can do a quick run through again, Doc, of our technologies to give everybody a baseline to go from, and then we'll get right into questioning. How's that sound?
How long would you want me to spend on that?
Well, I think how's 20 minutes? 20 minutes or thereabouts, 20, 25?
All right, let me go find it. Hold on one sec.
I think that gives us a great basis for some of the new people that have jumped on this call today to just ensure they have an update as to.
Would you want me to do the overview of all the product or the long-term use study?
I say, because of some of the questions that we have today, I would go more towards the long-term use study. And I think that'll tie in really well with some of the questions that we have.
Great idea, Ange.
Okay. So let's do that. All right. All right, so welcome everybody that's new to Vox Life. I am very excited to share this with you. This is a study that we've been working on. I've been with Vox Life for, I guess, 4 years now. And we've been working on this and wrapped it up at the end of last year. Even with COVID, we still had to try to track these people down and see what was going on with their brains. And so I've seen so many amazing things over the last 4 years working for Vox. I've performed over 8,000 brain maps with and without the technology on. And I specialize in neurofeedback and in brain mapping in my practice. And so I was sure that this is more than just change my brain for the moment I'm wearing the tech, and that it was actually having some long-term effects for the people that chose to continue to wear it. So we took 20 people and I studied them for over a 3-year period. Now, all of them had to have a minimum of 8 months in between brain maps. So it wasn't always at the 12-month mark, because they were scattered around the country and I'd see them at different events, or they'd fly into Denver here where I'm at. And so we did the first maps on everybody, happened in the year 2018. The second map was right around or in the year 2019. And then the final maps were in 2020. And so you're going to see 3 images all side by side. The one on the left will be 2018, in the middle is 2019, and the right is 2020. 20. And so that's how it's going to play out. Now, when we look at the cortex, this is the part of the brain that you think, say, feel, and do. Okay. When we say, how are you feeling? It's always the cortex that you're judging how I'm feeling, because that's allowing you to have all the input to the brain and what you're consciously in charge of. And so a healthy brain is going to be gray. Gray is not only healthy, within 2 deviations of normal, it's still gray. So once it gets 3 deviations ahead, or let's call that 3 times too fast, then it turns yellow. And then when it's 4 times too fast, it's turning red. So ideally, we should not see any colors at all. The colors are areas of dysregulation. So initial maps on these people, we see a lot of red, especially in the back of the head. And then by the first year, most of the red had calmed down and it's orange. And by the 3rd year, oh my goodness, it's all back within normal range. Now keep in mind, all of these images that you're seeing are people without wearing their socks. So this is baseline improvement, because neuroplasticity is what happens when you're actually growing new brain tissue, creating permanent change. So by wearing these socks, it takes a few years to do what we can aggressively do in a month. But regardless, just putting on a pair of socks, a knee brace, a patch is going to allow your brain to continuously optimize itself and continuously improve the next best area of your brain when a certain part of your brain becomes balanced. So it's not just one, it's everybody in the study. We're seeing some significant changes where it's better, better, best. Okay. And so that was the cortex. Now we're going to take a glimpse at what we call information flow. Information flow is how fast and efficient can you get information allocated from one part of your brain to the next. When somebody asks you a question, can you just respond instantly? Or do you have to think about the answer for maybe a few microseconds or maybe a few minutes before that's going to actually come? Now, typically 90-something% of the patients will present with a lot of red and yellow in this category. When we see blue, that's usually because of a head trauma or aging. When people start to get older, they'll lose cognitive function and we'll see these fibers turn blue. Now, ideally, there should be no fibers at all if you're super healthy. What you're seeing are the dysregulated ones. So we see a very unpredictable brain initially on the left, because we have reds and yellows and blues. So it could go overstimulated or understimulated, where it either bombards the signals or it's just not talking. There was definitely more blue, which we're always more concerned with the blue. Within a year, almost all that blue, which leads to all sorts of neurological deficits, has finally all woken up within the first year. And then by the 3rd year, within the 2nd year, and then by the 3rd year, we continue to see less and less lines. So, and again, we're going to see this consistently across the board. Maybe not so much blue, but thicker lines on the left. We're starting to be able to see through them, and then even better. So again, better, better, best. Then we look at coherence. This tells me how well somebody can comprehend something when it's put in front of them. Is it easy to look at it and know exactly what you need to do with it? Or is it, whoa, this is kind of confusing, I don't understand, okay? That's the initial coherence. And usually it's an exact inverse of what we were seeing in the information flow, the previous one. So this doesn't mean that there's damage. It means that if the information is bombarding it so much, it's going to make it confusing to understand. Kind of like being in a crowded room with a bunch of people talking, you're trying to pay attention to the person in front of you, and you're just not able to get it to click. So we see this dramatically improve. Oops, sorry, wrong direction. From one subject to the next. This is a lot of dark blue in this subject. So very, very poor coherence. And now 2 years later, they're comprehending things super easy. Same thing with all of those scenarios. And then we look at lagged coherence. So the difference between coherence and lagged is the initial onset of how much can I comprehend and understand this versus the longer I try, does it get easier or harder? So in this case, these should get easier for most people. And again, we're seeing fewer and fewer lines, certainly less dark blue. And so we're seeing these people 3 years later having an amazing ability to comprehend things when they put their effort into it. Then we start to look at these purple dots that we're seeing in the brain. Each purple dot represents a region of brain tissue that has a very specific neurological function. Now, in these networks, every dot has to send a line to every other dot in the network. So you can see it would get very busy with a lot of lines. Typically, if I had all the lines on, the healthy ones and the unhealthy, you would not be able to see through the purple dots at all. So even the image on the left, although we do see a lot of blue and red, which is concerning because it's unpredictable, this is a network in the brain that when all these dots are communicating well to each other, you have your working memory, mental flexibility, and self-control. So your executive functioning network is the most important network for you to have any type of social skills and be able to communicate with another human being. Okay, that is all working memory, mental flexibility, self-control. And you can see this network gets better the longer they're wearing the tech. Especially the blue again is waking up and disappearing. Fewer lines equals healthier functioning network. Now the default mode network, this is the foreman that's in charge of all other networks. So while you're asleep, it's regulating and making sure all the workers have inventory for what part of your body needs to be new tissue laid down and where you need healing and what supplies you have available. During the day, when we see a lot of lines, it means you're distracted. You are not present. You're thinking of future and past stuff. You're lost inside your head somewhere and you're not actually here present in the moment with me. So again, the fewer the lines, the better somebody has to be able to be present and to make all the networks turn on and do all the things that they need to do while you're sleeping. So we see significant improvement again with everybody that's wearing this tech long term. All these networks will continue to clear and get better. The limbic system, this is the heart brain. This is allowing your body to feel excited or depressed when it's appropriate to, and not when you're not trying to feel that way. The more lines you see, the easier it is to get stuck in an arousal state that's not fitting for you because it doesn't match your actual environment. So we see some great changes here with this network too over time where the network eventually clears. And keep in mind, everybody, you would think that this last map would be off the charts worse because of the pandemic and everybody struggling financially and their careers got turned upside down and so much more stress on everybody. But the people that were continuing to wear their technology had a reserve that was just uncannily unusual for the circumstances that were going on. And we're continuing to see people actually improve during these major times. Working memory is a big issue for so many people. We can actually improve that cognition. The blue is like very poor memory. Okay, again, we're always more concerned when we see blue lines. So just in that first year, they were able to wake up so many things in the memory that may never have been able to be turned around had they not been introduced to this technology. And we see this across the board with all the people that we're studying. The pain network. Just because you have a lot of lines doesn't mean that you're in pain. It means that you don't departmentalize and manage your pain very easily. You might have a little insult that causes a whole bunch of pain, or you're just not feeling it and you're pushing your body to the point of damage. And so we want to be able to identify when there's discomfort, but also turn it off at will. Be like, I got the message. I won't do anything to aggravate that. And when this network is not functioning well, you're just not that in tune with your body to be able to departmentalize, turn that signal on and off at will when it's not suiting you. And too many people live in a lot of pain and just can't departmentalize it. So that's a huge thing for Vox. We've been seeing that happen since day one. And that's why people put them on and actually feel better. Here is your typical case of ADD. This is somebody that thinks, 20 things at the same time instead of 7. Okay, the more lines you see there, the more difficult it is for somebody to stay on track and stay focused. We see all these people clear up over time. Again, this is without medication, and this is even without the technology on at the time we did the test. And so we're truly seeing neuroplasticity in its best, cleaning up some of the worst networks that these people had. And remember, the tech doesn't know that to go after this network or that. It's opening up brainstem. Past the brainstem, it's going to go to wherever your worst problem was. And so these were all people that had similar issues showing up on their brain map that we've been able to track over time. So the attention network ventral, this is saying, hey, how well can I adapt when something doesn't go my way? When unavoided things happen and plans change, does that get me really upset, or do I just roll with it? Like, yeah, there's a reason for everything. God's got my back. That's all I need to worry about. I'm not going to like fret over this. When we see a bunch of lines here, these people do not like unexpected change. It's very difficult for them to bounce back. And again, we're seeing this change with pretty much everybody, building reserve and clearing networks. Now, this is going to be amazing because now we're looking at more than 200 networks all turned on at the same time. So it's very seldom we can ever just see purple dots without lines, and we can see through any section of this. But check out how much clarity comes with people wearing the tech. This would never happen by default. Let me just promise you that. If you're going to change any type of the brain activity and the way it's programmed and the way it's functioning, you have to target that and be very aggressive with it. The cells that make up your brain and your spine are the same cells you were born with and are going to die with. They do not replace themselves, and they do not necessarily adapt to the trauma. They're going to try really hard, but they don't get to say, hey, this cell's about to die. I need a new one. Bring me a stem cell. No, you have to be challenged and be one step beyond what you're capable of doing in order to elicit a stem cell to be released in the brain. And that's exactly what these socks are doing. And we're proving that over time, because again, this would never change just by default. And we can see so much of these lines clear up with every individual. The blue in the left quadrant is gone. And we're seeing clear. Look at this one. You can't see through any of it. A third of it is blue. By a first year, the whole back of the brain cleared up. By the third year, it's like 60% of all the dysfunction in this brain cleared naturally, all by itself. So Vox Life is basically looking at neurofeedback made easy. This is something that is so dramatic. People pay thousands of dollars to do training to target areas of their brain and try to get some relief. This is a $35 pair of socks or a $2 a day patch that's actually making these permanent changes in your body. And that is just worth the price of admission right there.
Wow, that is fantastic. Like you said, Dr. Mark, it's for the price of $35 or $2 a day, people will spend more on a specialty coffee a day than they will sometimes for promoting good health or whatever. I'm not saying that having a specialty coffee is a bad thing. What I'm saying is don't compare, or a glass of wine in Phil's case, which I see that he's having.
I thought you wouldn't see that.
But certainly amazing things that we're seeing. And as a doctor that specializes in brain mapping and neurofeedback, Dr. Mark, this must be just absolutely fabulous for you to see these kind of things in people that you're brain mapping.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why all my patients that do the neurofeedback, the socks is the number one step before we do anything. It's like we want to do everything we can to optimize your neurology and get the most out of any therapy we're doing. And if it's brain therapy, you might as well clear the brain first of easy disturbances that can be regulated, and then go for the good stuff and target it.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that Angela was just out there recently with her husband, Jim, and had met with you. And had done some maps again. And I think, Angela, you've got a couple of questions that we can give Dr. Mark that sort of talk about or allude to the brain mapping.
I do. I just want to say, though, if looking at those slides and you feel kind of disconnected to them, even though they're remarkable. So just recently, I was out in Denver and got to see Dr. Mark and had my second brain map. So now I have a 2-year comparison in wearing the technology for myself. And when I tell you that my first brain map was really shocking to me because I found out some things I didn't know about myself. But to see the amount of difference just being consistent and wearing the tech every day for the last 2 years, being able to see that for myself was unbelievable. So that study that Dr. Mark just presented to you is 100% true. I have my scans to prove that the change does happen. And I've done nothing else. I mean, there's been no neurofeedback, no biofeedback, no other therapies per se. It's just been wearing the tech. So that is super amazing. But Dr. Mark, along those lines, we have a couple of, I don't want to say easier questions, but easier questions. And then we have a couple that are a little more detailed. So I'll start with the easy one that doesn't really necessarily have to do with the brain mapping so much. But can you talk a little bit briefly about the benefits of wearing HPT for plantar fasciitis?
Well, we don't like to talk about any specific condition, and this technology is going to address that condition. When it comes to plantar fasciitis, this is something that is pain in the ball of your foot, and it's very real. It's very annoying, and every time you're stepping, it's creating an issue. So we do put the tech on, and we do see obviously an elimination of pain for most people, and we see an improvement of range of motion by maybe 15% on average. And so just to speak to plantar fasciitis, this is a structure function problem, not a diet problem, not what's in the blood problem. It has to do with the mechanism of your foot. And when you're walking in your gait and your foot doesn't glide and articulate within the joints of the foot like it's supposed to, it puts an awkward stress on the ball of your foot, and it literally starts yanking the tendons off the bone. And that's a structure function very easy to correct with chiropractic. Find out if the chiropractor does extremity work and help, and you have to address that first. Now, when it comes to your nervous system, 90% of your nervous system is designed for function and only 10% for pain. So by the time you ever experience pain anywhere in your body, whatever part of that body is experiencing pain has already lost 50% of the function in that area before you ever experience pain. So pain's the last thing to come after you've lost a lot of function, and then it's the first thing to leave when you start restoring function. So just because you put your socks on and all of a sudden your plantar fasciitis pain disappears, it doesn't mean that it's fixed the problem. It's just taken some of your neurology and given you a little bit of range of motion in there, and it's given you a little bit better control over your nervous system. And so it's allowing you to deal with the warning light. But if you don't go fix the function of your foot, you're going to always continue to rehab exacerbations of those symptoms. And so clearly wearing the socks all the time is going to help neurologically. Try to stay on the opposite side of the pain. But, again, we don't treat structure function with the socks. We're treating your nervous system and opening up your brainstem so your neurology can respond quicker, more robustly to whatever demand your nervous system is needing. And when that comes to healing, clearly we can see from the study that we just did, over time, it's always going to keep healing the areas that were the most dysregulated.
Perfect. So then kind of along that line of We know because of the homeostasis that the HPT creates in the brainstem, it allows our body, I don't want to say this wrong, but it allows our body to be in the optimal place for healing, correct?
Well, it's going to allow the optimal place for neurological function and flow.
Okay.
And so the better our neurology functions, the better our immune system will work.
Wait a second. Muted here.
All right, way to go, Terry.
Okay.
So
So
did we finish
leading
answering that?
kind of, but I'm gonna kind of lead into the question
Okay.
here. We know that, say, treatments of some sort, whether it's PEMF treatments, whether it's medicinal or supplemental treatments, can actually be enhanced when we wear HPT. What happens if someone is using cannabis while wearing HPT?
Well, there's certainly no contraindication for wearing HPT. And so, like anything, whether it's cannabis or whether it's an essential oil or whether it's a nutrient, if your nervous system is heightened and your brain can communicate better to your body, it's going to be able to let your body know the supplies that it has available for healing and the resources it has available. And it's going to help your brain figure out how to optimize both of those things when I go to sleep. And so we're all going to utilize our nutrients and food and supplements and medications, all going to utilize that based on how our nervous system is responding to it. So if our nervous system is heightened and actually functioning more optimal, it's going to get the job done faster and probably more efficiently and effectively than it would have been able to do without. So most people would find over time they're going to need less and less of the nutrients to maintain health, versus sometimes they need more in the beginning to build the health. But regardless, this is going to help you get the most out of them, like any therapy or nutrient or food. Remember the analogy of your brain stem. Most of you might not realize, but that's the most important part of your brain. You can literally cut a chicken's head off above the brainstem and it can stay alive for hours running around because the brainstem controls the function of most of the body. And so when we open up that brainstem, it's like you going to a concert and there's a big parking lot and a big stadium and there's this long line because there's only a couple doors letting people in, but I see 15 doors on the side of the building. And everybody's getting frustrated because now they're hearing cheers inside. So we know something's about to happen and I'm missing out. Well, when all 15 doors open at the same time, you think that crowd's going to stay in a single file line going to those two doors? No, they're going to run as fast as they can to every open door, and that crowd's going to get in as quick as possible. That's what HPT does to your brain. It allows you to not just be operating on 2 or 3 doors. It literally opens up every door and window in the building and allows all that information in instantly. And then you can process it so much faster. So it's all going back out to the body just as quick. And so the job's going to get done one way or another. How fast and efficient do you want your body to do it? By wearing the tech, it makes it happen instantly, just like that.
Perfect. So now getting a little more technical. Someone with a spinal cord injury, which I know you'll be able to speak very well on since you have personal experience with this, Dr. Mark. The spinal cord injury causing disruption between the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. Does this change the effectiveness of HPT?
Well, it just depends. So if it depends on where you're putting the tech. So if you have, let's say, numb hands, numb feet, no feeling in your arms and legs, the tech will still work. It'll still get to your brain. It wouldn't be as effective in that case as taking the patch and putting it right on your brainstem. You know, just getting it right close to the brain as possible. And so I've done lots of maps on people trying to determine if I put more than one piece of tech on me, would I get a better effect than just do I need both socks or is it just one sock? And if I did the socks, the insole, and a patch, does that have a greater effect than just the socks alone? And so all those questions led us on a whole series of brain maps with all those variables. So just the socks, then we added the patch, then we added the insoles, then we took away the, we had every combination of all of the tech on at the same time versus each one individually, and then each pairs of each option that we could find. And literally all the brain maps and all the concussion index and everything that we looked at all lined up 100%, whether there was one piece of tech or 10 on them. It really didn't matter. It wasn't making any better of an improvement. And then we came across people that had injuries. So one girl had a shoulder that was replaced and they nicked a nerve and she atrophied a bunch of the muscles in her shoulder. So, but that was the hand she used to write with. So I did the brain map and then I put the patch on the right arm and she had a 32% change. Well, the average was 34% in all the studies we've done. So I figured she was right on point to hit the average mark. But then I thought to myself, well, I wonder if the injured shoulder has anything to do with not getting that full signal to the brain, which would be in your case if the person asking has peripheral disconnect or issues with their periphery. And so I said, would you mind if I do one more brain map and take this patch off and put a new one on the other arm? And she said, sure, go for it. So we did that. And the other arm had a 64% change in her neurology. So literally twice as much because it didn't have to go through a damaged area. So again, it just matters of where you're putting it. If you're fine with your hands, but you have bad neuropathy in your feet, I would either use the insoles because the depth of the grooves will be easier to pick up with you have lack of nerve flow, or I would use the patch on the arm or on the spine, or somewhere closer to my brainstem. And so I think that's the best way to answer that.
It's fabulous. Going back now to the brain maps a little bit, there's lots and lots of questions every time we talk about brain maps. Everybody says, I want to get that done. How do I do that? Where do I do that? How do I go about getting this done? I just recently posted a couple pictures of my 2-year brain map and everybody was like, how do I do this? So can you go through a little bit about if somebody can't get to you or they can't get to Dr. Passfield, how do they even start looking to get a brain map done, and what questions do they need to ask?
So it's difficult in some regions of the world where we don't have a whole lot of doctors doing this. You would Google QEEG near me. Would probably be the good phrase to Google. And then you're going to see if you have any doctors in your vicinity that are offering QEEG. When you ask them what software or what company do they use. I prefer BrainMaster or NeuroGuide. Those are the two top ones that we have. You also want to make sure, if it's not one of those two, that when they're recording the brain map, that they're recording all 19 channels at the same time. If they're not doing that, it's not going to give us near the same amount of data to know everything that's going on with you. So I know more and more people are getting into this field, and getting the brain map can cause absolutely no harm. It's just microphones on your head that are listening and recording brain activity. There's no input to you, it's just listening. And so most hospitals have them, but they're going to cost about $2,000. Typically people that do it for cash, it's somewhere around $500 here in the United States is an average price. And so that would be varying depending on where you're at. So,
and so then for those of us that are wearing Vox technology, how do we explain? I know like around me, it's a lot of chiropractors that have QEEG, or a lot of people that offer neurofeedback or biofeedback. How do we go about explaining to them without them looking at us like we have 10 heads, that we actually want 2 maps done? One without these special funky socks on and one with them on, but they can happen back to back. How do we explain that to someone?
So I would just say that I've been using some amazing wearable neurotech that does a brain hack, and it helps improve the cognitive and the overall function of my brain. And there have been thousands and thousands of people that were studied with this technology, and it proved about a 34 to 36% improvement in overall brain function. And they've even done a long-term study that shows wearing the socks over time has permanent changes closer towards homeostasis when it comes to the neurology of our brain. I know that was a big mouthful, but basically you have wearable neurotech that improves neurological function in the brain within 10 seconds. And there's 5 million people that wear this every day and love it. And I would like to have my own data on exactly how much of my brain's changing and what's changing. And so I would like a comparison map. And what do you charge for that?
Perfect.
That's not so odd, and that doesn't make me feel like you got 3 heads. People ask me all the time, hey, I got this new funky juice or this potion or this CBD oil or this thing, and can you, what would it cost for a brain comparison? So people want to see, does it actually change anything or not? There's a lot of hype on a lot of products, and a lot of it doesn't really do what they say it's going to do, you know? And so we like to begin with the proof first and then move to sales, right?
That's awesome. I know there's what is the difference? We see some brain maps that have just like a flat picture in reds and greens and blues with kind of several little dots within that little oval, or we see like the 3D image that you've just shown us. What's the difference in those brain maps, and is one better than the other?
Well, when you're looking at the reports, it's again, there's so many options with our software in which images we want to bring up. A lot of times, like the 3D images are very impressive, but they're also so many layers to the 3D images. For instance, when we're looking at the cortex alone, which is the gray matter, which are the things that you can say, think, feel, and do, there's 10 layers of cortical tissue. When I look at the 3D map, I can take each layer individually and tell you, well, over here, you can see this part of your brain is a little heightened. So in all companies, in all brain maps, reds and yellows are typically higher activity, and then the blues and the dark blues are lower activity, and it's either gray or green, which is normal. So when we look at the 2-dimensional image, I'm able to compress all 10 layers of the 3D into one layer and give a summary of all of that data. So the 2-dimensional ones can be typically more accurate at me telling you all the symptoms of everything going on in your body. Like I'm looking at an x-ray. You can't hide your bones. You can't hide your brain map. It's like we can tell you exactly what you were presenting with that day neurologically. And so some of them are more complicated to understand. If you're looking at a page and it has like 50 silhouettes of an image on the one page, and it's like a rainbow of swerving colors, that's a little harder to comprehend because it's basically looking at every bandwidth of your brain wave from one, and then it's telling you what that one brainwave is presenting in all those slices, like looking at an MRI. So typically the software that comes with our brain mapping equipment spits out a 100-page report, which is so much information, so hard for patients to do that. So we use a bunch of different softwares, and certain pieces of each software that I prefer is the easiest to visualize and to understand. And we create these reports, but it takes us hours to do so. So it's not just an automatic generated thing that's, you know, super easy, but I'm all about understanding it and being able to fully comprehend what's changing and why it's changing, and then what's the goal, and begin with the end in mind, and all of that, and not just randomly train something. Okay.
That's a whole lot of information on brain mapping, and we don't hear, we see the brain maps and we typically hear, what it's looking at, but we don't get a lot of really in-depth like that. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Mark, because that's going to answer a whole lot of questions for a lot of people.
Let me piggyback that with understanding the importance of the QEEG and when somebody would be prescribed to do that. So if you were in an accident and you had a head trauma, there is 5 things that they're going to look at to determine how bad was your trauma. The first thing is X-ray. They need to make sure you didn't break your skull. Okay, that's easy. That's just a quick X-ray, a little bit of radiation. We're okay. You didn't break your skull. That's good. Then they're going to do an MRI to see if you ripped any of the tissue in there. There's lesions like a cut or swelling, or a lot of tissue is compacted into this side. So they can see something's abnormal, but it's not going to really tell them anything about function. It's just going to say that that doesn't look right. So then they order a CAT scan. Now a CAT scan, for those of you that don't know, it's like taking 250 X-rays of your brain. Okay, so a lot of radiation. We really don't want to do that unless we suspect that you have internal bleeding. So if you've had a hemorrhage or a tear in any of the vascularity because of your head trauma, they need to know right now. So the risk versus benefit is going to outweigh the radiation you're getting, because if there is bleeding, it could kill you. We need to stop it immediately. So CAT scan does that. They may look at a functional MRI to determine blood flow through the vessels, again, looking for normal blood flow or clots or a stroke or things like that. And then they're going to do the QEEG. So the QEEG is the only one out of everything we just talked about that actually tells me what's going on neurologically with you. You may present this way, but it might not have any symptoms. You might have a lesion here. We should expect symptoms, but there's no symptoms. You might have swelling over here. Yeah, no symptoms. Okay, so what's actually functioning neurologically, that's your cue. So they can see seizure activity. They can see histories of strokes. They can see any type of neurological trauma deficit, which networks have been disrupted by your trauma, whether it's your focus, your anxiety, your mood, your sleep. I mean, there's so many different things that we can pinpoint. That trauma just affected this area of your brain, which means now you can't do these certain tasks. And they're like, oh my gosh, how did you know that? It's just like looking at an X-ray, okay? You can't hide from it. Wherever the damage is, we just know what that tissue is controlling, and those are your symptoms. And so it's not like I'm a prophet. I just look at the MRI, and you can't hide from the results. And so it is what it is.
What is we have a question of what's the difference between the QEEG and just an EEG?
So an EEG is usually a single spot, and it's usually the top center of the brain, and they're trying to hear an image of the whole brain from the one spot. So we had that for decades before it evolved. The Q means that we're recording all of them at the same time. It's quantitative. So some brain mapping machines will only map like 2 spots at a time for a minute or 2, and then it goes the next 2 spots, then the next 2, and the next 2, and the next 2. And then at the end of it all, after about an hour and a half, it puts them all together and says, if it happened at the same time, this is what's going on in your brain. And again, that was the best we could do for decades when it finally evolved to a more complex brain. But then it evolved into being able to do all 19 at the same time. So if you're not doing all 19 at the same time, you don't get the same amount of data. So if I had somebody sitting in a room with the door closed so you couldn't see in the room, and had the person start yelling, you could tell me that there's somebody in that room yelling, but you couldn't tell me where they were standing in the room because you don't see them. Now, if you put a microphone every foot around the corner of that room and they started yelling or made any noise in that room, that noise takes a certain amount of time to get to each microphone. They can triangulate that data and tell me exactly the square I was standing on in that room. And so if you're not taking and recording it all at the same time, I can't say, hey, what brainwave am I hearing? Where did it originate from? Where did it end? How long did it take to get from A to B? That's super significant, and you'll never get that data with an EEG. You need a quantitative one to be able to see 3D images for one, and to be able to get 10 times the amount of data. When we see it all at the same time, we can see so much more on what is really going on. But if you don't have access to that, the next best thing is the EEG, because at least we're going to see, is there any irregular patterns, that are jumping out? Now, keep in mind, back when I started this over a decade ago, that's all we had was EEG. And I still had paralyzed people getting up and walking, autistic kids that never spoke a day in their life, 12 years old, just start talking. I've seen so many miracles take place with just a single EEG and single spot training. Now we can do multiple spots, target areas, and do amazing things. So even back when it was really simple, we still saw miracles all the time. It was so exciting. And now it's just, we expect it to happen quickly.
Great. Dr. Mark, there's been a question come in. If someone's myelin sheath is damaged in the long axons to lower limbs, would patches be superior to socks and insoles?
Not necessarily. I think they're all going to do the same thing if you don't have, like, again, a peripheral damage when it comes to that. But that myelin sheath, it's a very critical part of your brain function. So there are other nutrients that that we do take that we won't mention on the call today that do assist with that. And that's not so much a brain training thing to necessarily grow all that back. But we certainly want to avoid heavy metals and toxins and things at all cost in your diet if you're having that, because that myelin sheath is part of the blood-brain barrier that's protecting your brain. And when that's damaged, you can get things entering into the brain that you don't want there. So, that's certainly important. I would be thinking probably Neurovax would be the one that's probably most important, because it's helping control the function of your blood. And we want to get the blood, and the reserve capacity of that blood to be improved, to have more when you need it.
Great. Dr. Mark, there was a question that came in, and I'll just sort of summarize. This person is saying that in our testimonials group, they've seen lots of testimonials with our HPT, our primary technology, deal with a lot of different issues, deal with sleep issues, balance issues, just overall health being better. So they talk about the other technologies. So our other technologies, why would it be an improvement if HPT looks after so many things? Would it be a benefit to where some of the other technologies that we have, be it the Neurovax, be it the sleep patch? Maybe we could talk a little bit about sort of the primary and the secondary technologies, or our first technology being the HPT.
All right, so we have 6 technologies. Let me share something with everybody. That's my Vox poster. You can kind of see that. We'll get everybody a copy of that wants that in their office too. But that basically shows us all the different technologies that we have. One of them is HPT, which targets the brainstem. And as I've mentioned in the past, that's like having the janitor key to the whole building. So when you open up the brainstem, whatever your brainstem needs to fully function at 100%, it's going to take that first. And then there's always leftover. The leftover is going to find its way to the absolute worst part of your brain first. So wherever your brain needs it, if I use 10% of my 40% improvement in my brainstem, I got 30% left to go wherever I need it next. In you, it might be your frontal cortex for your decision making, or it might be your sleep center, or it might be your immune response because you're dealing with some sickness of some sort. So it has the ability to go anywhere, and it will go wherever it's needed most. All other 5 technologies that we have are going to target a very specific part of your brain that's not the front door, and it's not going to have the ability to adapt and spill over into any other part of your brain. So here's the thing, HPT first always. You got to open up the traffic and allow everything in and out of the brain so your body knows exactly what to do. Past that, if you wear any of the other technologies, it's going to target that one part of your brain. And if for some reason your HPT was already there, HPT will not stay there. The new technology is going to override that part because that's its job. Now HPT is going to flow into the next best area, because remember, past the brainstem, it's fluid to go anywhere. Everywhere else is only going to that room in your brain, and it's going to keep that room optimized. So we have our Neurovax, which is our immune patch. That's the central nervous system and the immune reflexes. So how quickly we recognize something that's foreign, that's not supposed to be there, and deal with it. That's Neurovax. It's only going to do that, and it's going to do it very well every time you wear it. It's going to keep your blood at physiological homeostasis, which is critical for true function of your capillaries. Now, past that, we have the REM patch. The REM patch targets the sleep centers of your brain to calm down the chatter and to fine tune the deep and the REM sleep. And that's where your body does 75% of all of its healing in one day. It's going to be during deep and REM sleep. So you want to make sure that you're tapping into that and staying in that long enough. Then we have the meta patch. That's going to be targeting your metabolism and help you burn more fat without more exercising and without making your heart rate jump up. And then we have our Boomy socks, which is mindfulness made easy. It's our happy socks is what I call them. And so that's to help with the serotonin, the dopamine, all the different neurotransmitters in your brain that are helping you feel happy and joyful. So they're helping you regulate your moods to be optimal, okay, as accordingly. And then of course our eSmarter sleeve. That's the sleeve that's going to target your 10 cognitive networks. This is memory. A lot of people have issues with memory. This is visualization. This is pattern recognition. This is recall. This is speed, accuracy, and decision making. All of these things are in the front and back of our brain. And this one was originally designed for people with attention issues. And then they found, oh my goodness, it's the athletes, it's the musicians, it's the artists, it's the people that study, the students, it's anybody that wants their 10 cognitive networks to function better. That's the eSmarter sleeve. So that's our 6 products. They all have a very specific function. HPT is by far the most important one. If you're only going to wear one, that would be it, because it's going to have the ability to help your entire brain and target the entire brain for homeostasis over time and continuingly to heal the areas that are needing it most.
Fantastic. Well, as we said, Ange, this is going to be an awesome call, and as usual, it's absolutely fantastic. It's great to see you, Dr. Mark, and we so appreciate you out here in the field. Your ability to educate us in a way that we can explain things in layman's terms and not get too technical has always been a blessing for all of us. So we are very, very grateful, and thank you for all you do, and thank you for taking the time to be on this call. And Angela, as always, it's great to have you on here co-hosting with me. And I want to remind everybody that just a reminder that Wednesday we have the Real Stories, Real People, Real Results call with our UK partners on Wednesday, which is 8:30 their time, 3:30 our time. And Mel Eves will be the special guest on there, who has been involved in football in the UK for many, many years. And we'll speak to how this technology has helped people that he has introduced us to over in the UK. So I invite everybody to go on that call. There's always something to learn. Always share these calls with your teammates, and make sure that we're all learning and going forward. to share this technology to help mankind be the best that we can be. And if you haven't had a QEEG brain map done, then Dr. Mark says, Google QEEG near me, okay? And so you can find out whether that's done, or you can book an appointment with Dr. Mark and fly to Denver if you can't drive there and have it done. I know that I was fortunate enough to have my brain map done a couple of times with Dr. Mark as well, and to see the improvements from wearing this technology for my quality of life has been mind-blowing. So I encourage everybody, if you get an opportunity to do that, if you don't worry about it. You'll feel it, you'll see it, you'll realize it yourself in time. But wear the tech every day if you can, and let's continue in our pursuit of helping 1 billion people worldwide. So thank you all for being. Angela, you want to finish her off? Take us home.
Dr. Mark, thank you again. It's always brilliant to listen to your verbiage that we can all use and regurgitate. And there's also a Real People, Real Results call here in the US tonight.
That's right, at 8 p.m. Good reminder. Sorry about that. That's why we have a co-host.
we're at the top of the hour. Dr. Mark, thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate everything that you offer for us. And I hope everyone has a fabulous week.